take a simple idea and take it seriously. Welcome in. All right, so let's make the first trade on the account. You're going to find out all the details momentarily. So we're going to be buying this. I'm going to actually put in $900 in terms of the purchase, which is 90% of the price. Submit my order. Done. It's the first thing. Now, next, we're going to go back in, and now available to trade. Notice there's 100. So that's what we have there. I'm going to buy this. And again, this is going to be 100. So these are based on fractional shares. And submit our order. Done. So there are no fees within here. And I'm going to put in the description a link for anybody who wants to join the same brokerage that I use. And I'll take further questions down the line as well, if you will have them. And you can hit on that description. You're going to get $25 back in. I have no affiliation with them, okay, whatsoever. They're not sponsored or anything like that. But this is how I wanted to be able to start, so that you can see that we're going to be starting this for real. So this is a game to me. It's been a game pretty much from the beginning. So it's not advice to you. The advice is actually to a novice investor, myself. If I could have started all over again, how would I have approached my start to investing, and how would I proceeded to set up all my different accounts? That's who the advice will be to me. So if you follow tips without thinking, don't be surprised, okay, that the market will eventually teach you a lesson. So use your money wisely and never copy someone else's playbook without knowing what the rules actually are. Now, that being said, the goal here is to have a very transparent and disciplined approach, which is going to be documented as a diary very rarely. So if you're looking for episodes to pop up every week, well, it's not going to happen. They're going to happen maximum once a month or maybe once a quarter, because investing is an extremely long game. And it's the discipline to last for an extremely long game and to do the very, very simple things as long as possible. So if you want to join the community, you can. You can go on my site. You can email me if you want to be part of the newsletter. I'm going to be sending out, for example, full out summary of the notes from this episode number 1, so that you can take it with you and then use it, okay, as a study guide for yourself if you will want to. So what is this? Why am I doing this? Well, because I've been asked numerous questions throughout. And honestly, I thought to myself, if I could start all over again, how would I actually do it? What advice would I give to myself and to those maybe that I love? And my hope is that possibly my kids will actually watch this at some point and try to build the discipline that they have for an investing future. So my objective is actually very strange. Again, this is my objective and not necessarily your objective. So you better be careful, okay, on what you're going to be signing up for. So my goal is to save and invest every single month forever. Now, the key word here is indeed forever. So I am not looking to try to play this game for a short period of time. So in fact, if I was doing it for a year or for 5 years, or if I needed money soon, this is not the game that I would play. It would be a different game that I would play. But if I do have extra funds, what would I have done with them? Now, some people like to buy cars, like to buy shoes, like to buy clothes, motorcycles, or whatever it might be. Well, I like to buy companies and know that I'm owning, okay, a piece of the world. So we like different things. This is what I like to do. And this is the advice that I would have given myself. So I would have told myself this: make sure that if you start just invest globally. So throughout the entire world, don't start to pick a particular stock or a business or anything, you're going to be picking the entire global market. And that's what you had seen in the beginning. That's exactly what I had done. Avoid bias. So that means, don't concentrate something for yourself in one particular area. Minimize fees as much as possible. So make sure that the management fees or any fees that you have are pretty much almost next to zero. And then make sure that you automate it so that it continuously happens, so that you're not necessarily looking. Now, one of the key things is also keep a 20% cash buffer. Why? Well, because it's a margin of safety and ammunition for when really dark times come, that maybe you will have extra cash to try to A, either pay some bills that you haven't been able to, or B, try to invest it then maybe into some companies that have really been discounted once you learn how to actually take apart and put together companies for yourself and which ones you would want to invest in. So here's a checklist style. So this is what I would have told myself. First off, make sure that all the monthly expenses are covered. Now, if I'm talking to myself and I'm young and I'm lucky enough maybe that I don't have to pay rent yet, okay, or some other major bills, well, then this wouldn't have been very difficult to do. However, later on, as my kids came along and so on, well, this would have been much, much harder. But I always would want to prioritize, make sure that your monthly bills are covered. Number two, that there's no debt. There's no debt. Don't start buying stuff if you can't cover it yourself. Now, a mortgage might be a little bit different because if you're owning and you're having a family and so on, then it's going to be difficult for you. It certainly was difficult for me unless somebody gives you quite a gift, okay, that you're going to have a mortgage. So mortgage, that's part of your monthly expenses that you would have. But any other debts, don't buy those shoes, okay, if you don't got the cash. Next, okay, and this is purely for myself, just no excuses at all. If I would have been still living at home, okay, greater or equal to 60% saving is a must. It's a necessity. That's what I would been telling my kids and trying to drive that in. Try to live a little bit more frugal and then just spend the other 40%, okay, or maybe even less, okay, on yourself. That's more than plenty if your food is covered and so on and you're living at home. And so that's what you would have. Now, of course, that would dwindle if your actual lifestyle changes, if you have a family and so on, then it's much more difficult to try to save. But frugality is the key. So 20 to 60%, I would have been telling myself, always do that. Always do that. Then next, invest money that will never be needed. Now this is weird, but remember that if you're buying shoes or a car or anything else, now sure, it might be physical. You might be actually saying that, okay, well, I spent this money, but it's not coming back, right? It's not like in a week or two or something. Unless it's a return or something like that, you're not getting the money back for all the things that you spend, maybe the games that you like to play. So here, what I'm saying is, if I'm going to play this game, I'm going to assume that I actually don't need this money. So I am putting away money for future generations. Now, you might say, well, that's silly. Okay. But that's the game that I decided to play, so that I am investing and understanding that I will never need that money. Now, the next thing is I will buy the total world market. I'm not going to try to create a bias. I don't know which countries are going to win overall. So this means this is going to be really boring. Right? This is not going to grow very fast. This is going to grow pretty slow. And it's going to be very, very snail-like pace. And there's probably going to be people around, okay, that are going to be telling me, oh, how wonderful that maybe you'll, invest in cryptocurrency or something else. Great. Good. Let you do that. All right. I'm playing a different game for an extremely long period of time. I wanted something that is very sustainable for me to do. Now, again, I stress that I would have told myself just keep a margin of 20% cash buffer. Now, at some point, if you build up enough cash, you're not going to need to necessarily keep on putting that money in. Then you can start to enjoy, so you're basically delaying gratification for later, and you can start to use it for other things. Knowing me, What would have you used it for? Probably grabbing books and learning more, right? So that's what would have happened. And that's the next item, which is find a hobby. You have to find hobbies, okay? And hopefully it is something about learning. If you want to really figure out investing, well, then you're going to be reading a lot. So that's going to be a nice hobby that you will have. But when you're doing your hobbies, stop looking at the ticker, right? So stop looking at the market and the stock market and so on in your account, if it's grown or not grown. It's not good for you, right? So emotionally, it's going to keep swaying you back and forth, especially, okay, if the markets are super volatile. You can see there on the screen, I'm popping up, okay, as the tariffs came up in 2025 from Trump, how crazy the market, okay, and what the news was telling us. This doesn't care about anything. In fact, it's automated. It's always happening each month or each quarter on a consistent basis, high, low, doesn't matter. So that means you're always constantly buying the world. So those are my objective, and then those would have been my checklist. Make sure that you do that. Now, where would I invest? Well, you've just seen. I've just purchased. So this is my fund. This is what I'm going to do to try to emulate for myself to build the discipline to play this game. Now, this amount might be different for you. It doesn't matter. This is just, okay, an amount which is set aside. And for Canadians, as you're going through, I would have been purchasing these two in this particular ratio, 90% to 10%. And you can do that, right? You can set that up directly, make it automated so that it happens, okay? Or, you can come in. If you're going to be doing it and not automating it, then you should do it only once every quarter so that you're not thinking about it. Just build up your cash, and then once a quarter, go back in and then make your purchases. I will fully automate this. So this is going to be happening, and then I'll keep on disclosing it so that people can see what's happening to the assets. Now, if you're lucky enough and maybe you're just dealing with US money, then instead of doing this as a Canadian, okay, I would just purchase this. Now, of course, if you can do this and you don't have any currency issues, then just buy one particular VT, which is an ETF, which would buy you the global markets overall. This is kind of a simulation of it, and I'll try to track both of these, okay, to compare them over time. Then set them up bi-monthly or quarterly, and then rebalance annually. And then there's no selling. So when you're rebalancing, you're doing it, okay, and then I'll show you, if you stick around through all of these episodes, at the end of the year, by the way, how to rebalance if necessary. And then the dividend gets reinvested back in. Now, you may run into a lot of questions, okay, as you're walking through this, because if I did this and I was talking to myself and I was young, I would have been like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. So I would have to explain, okay, and then I would have questions. So if you do have questions, put them up in the comments. I will take them back in, and then in future episodes, I'll answer those questions, okay, so that people can have them and then see what is happening. All right, okay, so here it is. So that's what I would have done. Now, why this? Well, you're owning the entire market world. So this is basically buying pretty much all the kind of companies around the world except in Canada. Okay, so it's capital weighted, so it's pretty much majorly in the States, because currently the States are kind of the #1 global financial market. Okay, but it also has everything from Japan to China to Europe, etc. Right, so it owns everything. VCN is purely Canadian. Right, so this V stands for Vanguard. This X is actually from BlackRock. Okay, so the main reason why I've chosen this is because of just fees, that they have very low fees, and they provide me an extremely simple way to cover the strategy that I want to use, which is buy the world and then not think about much else. So if you're not going to be buying this and you're using US, then this is indeed a purist play, where the fees are extremely low. They're actually lower than these. And then you don't have to have any headaches of rebalancing or doing anything. You're just buying one particular item on a consistent basis. I mentioned the rebalancing. So because we're going to go and do 90% and 10%, then you can rebalance, because that can shift over depending on what actually happens overall in the markets, but it's not going to switch by much. in a year. So this is going to be very easy to do, and I will do that in future episodes once we get there. So there you have it. Now I'm going to give you and leave you off with some nice quotes from Charlie Munger. Things to remember. This is what I would have told my younger self. The big money is not in the buying and selling. It's in the waiting, patience. Most people will not be able to do this. Not because it's hard, okay? And definitely, it's not supposed to be easy, right? If you think it's easy, this is from Charlie Munger, anyone who finds it easy is stupid. Why? Because you're human and you're emotional. That's going to be hard. You're also working. Family comes in. So there's a lot of stresses that are external. This process, that's why automating it is so much better. Because when you're going to be feeling down, it's going to be very difficult and you're going to have all kinds of doubts when market starts to crash. And that's why it's not going to be easy. Now, the first rule is never interrupt compounding unnecessarily, which means is not selling, right? Not stopping. You just continuously going and buying and purchasing. That's what I've been telling myself. And then hopefully, my kids, if they take on this particular path. Now, if you're not willing to think rationally, okay, markets will eventually punish you. So if you're going to start playing a different game, and that will happen, your mind will always be going somewhere else, thinking that there is a better way. Now, there might be better ways, but you have to prove to yourself through an actual tracked record that you are better than the strategy that you have. That's what I would have told myself, and I would have saved myself a lot of losses throughout the years. Don't be stupid. Me, my younger self, don't keep trying to think, right? But would have I listened? I don't know. I don't think that I would have listened because I've heard that advice, okay, when I was younger, and I didn't necessarily listen. So I don't know if that advice will work for you, but if you are much more disciplined than I was, then great. This does not mean that you can't trade or you can't invest in other ways. You just have to do it with much smaller amounts, okay, and then do it for a certain long period of time to see if you actually are good at this. If you're not, if you don't want the headaches, then this is pretty simple to follow. Again, not easy. And you're not looking for perfect, right? Nobody is perfect. You're looking for something which is sensible, makes sense to you, and you can sustain it, right? That's how you're going to win. And you have to do that for an extremely long period of time. All right, so welcome to this crazy episodes that are going to be coming out. I have no idea where this is going to take us. I am doing it for my younger self, also for my kids, so that it is tracked throughout, and then I can see what actually happens. And hopefully I can maybe help some people along the way, okay, to avoid some silly errors. All right, thanks for watching. See you in probably a few months. Cheers. Unless you like math videos and physics videos. That's another hobby that I have, and I'm going to be putting that stuff up here, okay, and not these particular episodes.